Did you know that only 25 to 50% of what we say to other people is actually heard and received by the other person? Based on that fact, today I would like to talk about active listening. Listening is the most fundamental component of interpersonal communication. I think we should look into some ways in which we can practice the skill of active listening. Active listening is definitely a skill that you can acquire, but it is also a skill that is developed with practice. So in this video, we are going to go over how you can develop your practice of active listening. But first, mint tea. Are we on? We're on. So I would like to run through what active listening actually is, why it's important, and then how to do it. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, active listening can be a skill that you can develop with practice. However, it can be really difficult to master. And when we talk about how you develop or how you actually actively listen, you will see why some people get frustrated with their development when it comes to actively listening. It goes against natural behaviours, and therefore it takes perseverance and patience to develop the skill and to master it. Active listening is exactly as the name suggests. It is listening actively. That is having a full concentration on what is being said, not just passively hearing the message, as well as giving full attention to the person that is talking to you or people that are talking to you. It's really important that you or the person doing the active listening is seen to be listening. I think we've probably all been in those situations where we're talking and you can literally see the glaze coming over the other person's eye, and you move your head and they don't follow you and they're still kind of looking over there. They are not actively listening. I mean, can I say that for sure? Yes, I can. And that's because if they're actively listening, they've got to be looking at the listener. We'll go into tips on how you actually do active listening. But what's going on in their mind has enabled them to just glaze over and not pay attention visually to the person that's talking to them. If you are not seen as the listener to be listening, then that's when the speaker can conclude that you are not interested in what they have to say. Obviously, interest can be conveyed to speakers in a variety of verbal and non-verbal cues, such as kind of eye contact and nodding. It provides some encouragement to keep the speaker going. Therefore, by providing that feedback, you are more likely to put the other person at ease so they can communicate effectively and freely. You may also reduce their anxiety, and actually that way the person is more likely to be more open and more honest with what they are saying. I think it's probably pertinent at this point to say that listening is not something that just happens, because that is hearing. You can hear things without having to tune into them, but to listen, that takes concentration. It's a conscious effort that's made to listen to and understand the message that's being conveyed. With that being said, now let's look at how you actually actively listen. Mouthful. It's not quite ready yet. So the first thing with active listening is to be aware, be in tune with the moment, pay attention. Pay attention to your body language as well as what's happening in your mind. So one of the key things within active listening is to not start to prepare a dialogue in your mind when you're listening to the other person. So be aware of your thoughts, be aware of what frame of mind you're going into that conversation with, and even throughout the conversation. I've mentioned it in previous videos, you've got to provide a pause and allow break time before responding. That way you will not run the risk of cutting the other person off. I'm sure everybody has been in the situations where you are talked over, where somebody thinks they know what you're trying to say and tries to finish your sentences. All of those situations, Did you see that orb? It's just dust. 100% of those conversations, the person listening wasn't actively listening. They might have been hearing you, but they weren't really in tune with the conversation, with what you were trying to say. That leads me on to my next point, which is don't judge or withhold your judgment. Now, that doesn't mean that you're not allowed to have strong ideas for what the person is saying. Any good listener will be able to withhold their judgments and allow the other person to speak. That way, avoiding any type of argument. That is definitely not the situation that you want to be getting into when you're trying to actively listen. Don't criticize, don't judge. Keep that mind clear of any kind of conversation or response, and you may just open your mind up to some new perspectives. Now, this tip is my favorite one. It's called echoing or shadowing or reflecting. I'm not quite sure which one it is. And this is where you repeat the odd word back to the speaker. So an example could be, oh God, I'm having a really, really bad day today. Everybody's just getting on my nerves. I feel really stressed and I just don't know what to do. As the listener, you could maybe just pick one or two of those words to reflect back to the speaker. So I would always pick the word stressed. Now, any of my team watching this video will know that I'm not such an avid fan of that word. And I don't like the word stressed, even though we all feel it, because it doesn't actually mean anything. You have some sort of underlying issues that's causing you to be stressed, but the stress is the result, it's not the issue. So we can work on that stress, but you have to get to the underpinning crux of the matter to be able to then sort the feeling of stress, being stressed out. So I would then reflect back to that person, stressed. You can literally just say that, hold the pause, and they will know, just every single day just seems to be getting more and more work. I'm feeling really overwhelmed. I'm tired. Oh my God, there's so much work, so many project deadlines. I just can't keep up. That you can work with. You can find some kind of goal from that conversation. But when they've talked about feeling stressed, you've got to unpick that. You can't just go, okay, let's try and make you less stressed. It's an empty promise if you try to go down that route. Shadowing or echoing words back to the other person is really powerful. It can continue a conversation on without having a lot of input. Leading on from that is more around that kind of gaining clarity. So you always want to make sure that if you are confused about anything at any point in that conversation, gain clarity. There is nothing wrong with saying, hang on a second, I just want to make sure that I'm clear here. Are you talking about X? Or you can just say, apologies, I don't follow where you're going. If you are trying to practice active listening and you're wanting the other person to know that you've been listening, you are going to want to try and summarize the conversation. If you can remember certain elements of the conversation, that's really good then to build into the summary at the end of a chunk of conversation or at the end of the conversation. It really tries to build up that respect between you both and reaffirms that you have been listening. If you've kind of come up with some kind of action plan in that conversation, it's really good then at this point at the end when you're summarizing to definitely state what you have agreed or the responsibilities of each party. Now, those are the kind of main aspects of building in your skill set to be actively listening. But often, and I had this only yesterday when I was having a conversation with one of my team where the person came into my office, I was in the middle of an email, but I could just sense this aura of this is a conversation that needs to happen now, or it's probably not going to happen for a little while. I could just feel it. It was there. So I looked at the door and I was like, hey, come in. The person came in, sat down, chat. So I locked my computer, turned my body towards the person, but I turned my phone over because my phone gets my Microsoft Teams notifications and it is constantly buzzing. So I had to make sure that my phone was turned over and it was on silent. You have to limit distractions. When you're trying to actively listen, you cannot actively listen if your one eye is keeping an eye on the email corner of your screen or the phone there. You're waiting for it to light up because you're waiting for a message from your friend and you're trying to listen and your eyes are over on your phone. It's not a good impression. Technology is everywhere. So wherever possible, minimize the risk of you being distracted, either visually or mentally. So as soon as you're about to have a conversation with somebody, whether it's a serious conversation or not, get in the zone. Start to actively listen. Start to kick yourself into that stage of trains. I have to clear my mind, and I'm listening, I'm observing the body language, I'm hearing the tone of voice, I'm listening to the volume, I'm looking at the face, again, that kind of whole body language, and I'm really tuned into what the person's saying, not just hearing their message. Be okay with silence. Silence is golden. Oh no, that song's in my head. Silence is so powerful. It really does force the other person to talk more. There's a kind of rule of thumb that they say to do, I think it's 80% of the listening and 20% of the talking. If you can work on those areas outlined in this video, you will start to develop your own skill within active listening. Again, you have to practice this. Only the other day in a conversation with somebody, I had to tell myself to stop thinking of the internal dialogue and just let the other person speak and provide those verbals and non-verbals, the eye contact, the nodding, the smiling if appropriate. Everything that we've talked about in this video is tips on how you can start to engage in active listening. You will not become perfect. I struggle with it so much. It's definitely a skill that you have to keep practicing. So don't feel like you are going to go straight into the next conversation being able to be this amazing active listener. You may feel good because when you start to deploy some of these skills, you do actually start to get a lot more out of conversations. So you will feel the benefit of this almost immediately. So again, that is it for this video for this week, guys. You can see the other videos here. Check them out. And again, if you haven't done already, please do subscribe. It does mean the world to me. Give this video a like, a thumbs up, leave me a comment as well. And until the next time, see you soon.